The chair across from me was still warm. That's the first thing I noticed when I sat down to eat alone. Her plate untouched, a lipstick-stained glass half empty. I stared at the smudge like it was a fingerprint from another world. 1 minute she was here, twirling her hair, humming a tune under her breath, and the next she was gone. No fight, no door slam, just gone. In her place was a note folded 3 times, left beside the salt shaker like it belonged there. No envelope, no explanation. Just 2 sentences written in tight, slanted handwriting. I'm going away for the weekend. Please don't wait up. That was it. No heart emoji, no love you, not even her name. The air still smelled like her perfume, gardenia and vanilla. The scent lingered like a taunt, like she wanted it to hover to remind me of what I wasn't invited to understand. I stood there for a long time, staring at the paper like it might transform into something more honest. It didn't. The silence in the house was sharper than usual. It cut straight through my thoughts and left the edges raw. The chair creaked when I stood up. I walked to the window and looked outside. Nothing. Just fog bleeding across the street lamps and an empty driveway. Then the first strange thing happened. Her phone was still on the charger, still warm. I stared at it for what must have been a full minute before picking it up. No passcode. She hadn't changed it. That part felt almost cruel, like a trap for someone who still believed he had a right to look. I wasn't going to check it. I really wasn't until I saw the most recent text preview. Unknown number. Meet you by the dunes. Bring the necklace this time. What necklace? I opened the thread. Unknown. Can't stop thinking about last Sunday. That photo of you on the sink burned in my brain. Clara. Her name wasn't signed, but I knew it was her. You better behave this time. I told you. No marks. Unknown. No promises. He still has no idea. Clara. Lol. Not a clue. Still calls me his angel. I don't remember setting the phone down. I only remember the sound my own breathing made when everything else in the room was still, like a vacuum pulling everything I knew about my life into a hole I couldn't see the bottom of. She hadn't just left. She had escaped. And I was never meant to notice. I walked into the hallway and stared at the wedding photo on the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just listened to the silence, to the house, to my heartbeat, refusing to stay calm. I had a choice to make, and I made it quietly. By the time she returned, nothing she recognized would remain. Not the bed, not the table, not the man who once waited by the window just to see her headlights return. She went looking for something new, but so did I. I didn't move much the rest of that night. I sat in the living room, hands clasped tightly between my knees, the soft buzz of the old ceiling fan above me ticking faintly like a clock with no hands. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even hurt in the way people usually are. I felt more like someone watching a house burn down from 3 blocks away. Too far to stop it. Too close to forget what it once looked like. Around midnight, the hallway light flickered. The bulb had done that for weeks, just enough to annoy, never enough to replace. But that night it didn't flicker. It burned, steady, warm, almost defiant. Something about that felt wrong, like even the house was pretending not to notice she was gone. I went into her side of the closet, not looking for anything in particular. Maybe a hint, a sign, a piece of her left behind by accident. Instead, I noticed something missing. Her red scarf, the one she only wore when she wanted to be noticed. Her overnight bag that had necklace shaped like a silver crescent. The one she swore was just decorative, even though I once caught her kissing it before a dinner party. Gone. She didn't leave in a rush. She packed deliberately. I went back to the phone. I didn't want to keep reading, but I did. Curiosity and pain dance the same rhythm when you're too hollow to stop them. The chat with the unknown number continued. Unknown. 2 more nights and he's history. Clara, don't jinx it. He's slow, but he's not stupid. Unknown. You'll be free soon, and rich. Don't forget that part. That last line stuck to me like tar. Rich? What did that mean? We weren't poor, but we weren't gold-plated either. Our savings were modest, investments safe. I'd always handled the financials. Clara never showed much interest other than reminding me to set us up for a future. I never thought to question what she meant by us. I logged into our shared bank portal. The login hadn't changed. My heart pounded like I was doing something wrong, even though I wasn't the one sneaking off into the dunes. At first, everything looked normal. Checking stable, savings untouched. But then I noticed the brokerage account, one we barely used, had been accessed 3 times in the last 10 days. Transferred, reallocated, sold. Every mutual fund and ETF had been liquidated quietly and converted into something else. Something I couldn't trace. A new account name had appeared under linked external transfers. It wasn't in her name. It wasn't in mine either. Just a string of letters and numbers. My name was still on the mortgage, but everything else felt like it was already missing my fingerprints. She was planning something. This weekend wasn't a retreat. It was an exit rehearsal. I wanted to scream, but the silence in the house had grown too loud. It felt like it would swallow any sound I made. So I just stood there, breathing slowly, feeling my legs grow weak beneath me. I walked out into the backyard and stared at the sky. The stars were dim, the moon was low. I remembered how Clara used to tell me the moon was a mirror to the parts of us we never speak aloud. I whispered into the dark, "What are you hiding from me?" No answer, of course. But the next morning I got one anyway. Not from her. From someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A name I hadn't even thought of in nearly a decade lit up my phone as the sun crept through the kitchen blinds. It read, Kel and D. And suddenly everything clicked. Kel D. The name on my screen didn't come with a photo, but it didn't need one. My heart knew before my brain caught up. It had been years since I'd seen him. 8, maybe 9. But some names don't lose their weight with time. Some names carry rusted edges and unspoken debts. Kellen was once my best friend. Not the kind of best friend you grab beers with. He was the one who sat beside me on prom night after my date bailed, who helped me carry my father's casket when I couldn't feel my legs, who once stitched my hand up in a gas station bathroom when I broke a bottle trying to save a stranger from getting mugged. He was the man who stood behind me on my wedding day and whispered, "You picked a storm." But storms can be beautiful if you learn how to dance inside them. Then one day he disappeared. No calls, no message, just silence. Clara said he moved away for a job, that he was starting over, that he needed distance from who he used to be. Now, years later, his name was glowing on my phone. I didn't answer. I watched the screen buzz and die, watched the light fade like a breath held too long. I stood there staring at it for at least 5 minutes before curiosity tore a hole in my self-control. I opened the message he'd sent just before calling. It read, "She told you it was a retreat, didn't she?" I sat down. My knees actually gave out just for a second. I reread the line a dozen times before I finally replied, "Where is she, Kellen?" 3 dots, then nothing. 10 minutes passed. Then he finally wrote back, "You don't want the answer to that question, but you need it." And then, "Meet me at Grey Hollow tonight, 9 p.m. Grey Hollow was an old Reeser's cabin north of town, half abandoned, overgrown, unreachable by GPS. It was the place we used to sneak off to in college when we wanted to feel like the world couldn't reach us. Nobody else knew about it, not even Clara. At least, that's what I thought. I should have ignored him. I should have gone back to bed and waited for Clara to come home Sunday evening with her fake retreat stories and a souvenir soap from some coastal boutique. I should have acted like a man who still wanted his marriage to work. But I wasn't that man anymore. So I went. I left the house just before sunset. The drive was long, winding, and unkind. Fog rolled and thicker than usual. Trees leaned toward the road like they wanted to whisper warnings I couldn't understand. I pulled up to Grey Hollow around 8:55. The old wooden sign was still rotting at the edge of the gravel. I didn't see his car. The cabin looked dead. I almost turned around. Almost. Then I heard the door creak. He stepped out slowly, leaner than I remembered, older face hollowed out in ways life does to a man who's carried too many secrets. But it was Kellen, no doubt. He didn't say a word at first, just looked at me like I was a letter he forgot how to read. Finally, I asked, "Is it you? Are you the one she's with?" He flinched, just barely, then nodded once. It was the slowest, smallest, most devastating nod I've ever seen. "I didn't plan it," he said. "I didn't chase her. She came to me, found me 2 months ago, said she was tired of pretending." I didn't punch him. I didn't even raise my voice. I just let my hands drop to my sides like they were too heavy to lift anymore. "She told me you were sick," he added, "that you'd lost your mind, that you'd been watching her while she slept, that you'd snapped." I laughed. It came out like a bark, dry and empty. He looked away. "She said you were paranoid, that you were draining her, that she needed saving." "Saving?" I asked. He met my eyes again. "She's transferring everything to a new life, new name, new city, and she took your money to do it." That's when I realized this wasn't an affair. It was an escape plan, and I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her loose end. I don't remember sitting down, but I did. My legs gave out somewhere between Kellen's words and the sound of an owl shrieking in the trees nearby. The cabin's porch creaked beneath us, but neither of us moved. He leaned on the railing like he'd already said too much. I stared out into the woods like the trees might offer a reason not to scream. "She drained the accounts," I said finally, not a question, a confirmation. "You knew?" Kellen nodded, his jaw tight. "I didn't help her do it. She already had access. She used your social, your passwords. She told me you wouldn't notice. Said you were too gentle." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because that word stung worse than anything else. Gentle. Like weakness in disguise. "How long?" "Since March," he said. Started his texts, then phone calls, then everything else. "And you let it happen." "I tried to stop it," he whispered. "At first I told her to go back to you. To be honest, she said honesty was for people who didn't have to lie just to survive." That sounded like Clara. She always had a poetic way of justifying selfish things. "I didn't come here to fight," he added. "No, I said you came here to wash your hands before it all gets ugly. He didn't deny it. Then, something shifted in the air, something too soft to describe. A breeze rustled through the trees. The sky above the clearing opened just wide enough for moonlight to spill over the roof of the cabin. And that's when I saw it. Hanging from a nail just inside the doorway of the cabin, swinging gently, like a charm from a bracelet, was a wedding ring. Not mine, not hers. A new one. Thinner. Gleaming. I didn't know she left it there, Kellen said quickly. Too quickly. Maybe it's just symbolic. I don't know. You're engaged? I asked, my voice low. He said nothing. I stood slowly. My body wasn't shaking because of the cold anymore. Did she tell you about the new identity? I asked. He blinked. What? She's not just running away, I said. She's deleting me quietly. She's got someone helping her, maybe more than just you. Financial moves I didn't catch, messages I never saw. Someone's coaching her, helping her vanish without leaving a bruise. Now he looked afraid, Gigi genuinely. I thought it was just an affair, he said. I stepped closer. It's not. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. She said you were getting unstable, that you were following her, that you installed cameras. I did. I snapped. After she started locking the guest room and lying about where she was every weekend, I installed one inside the hallway vent. You want to know what I saw last month? He stopped. She brought someone into the house. When I was gone, it wasn't you. He wore gloves, sunglasses. He carried a small box and walked straight into my study like he'd been there before. What kind of box? Kellen asked. Metal, locked. She gave him something, 2 folders. He gave her the box. Kellen's breathing changed, and that's when I saw it. The flicker of doubt in his eyes. The realization that maybe he wasn't the only one being used. She's leaving me, I said. But she's also preparing to erase both of us. Maybe you're her real ticket out, or maybe you're just the last favor she needs to cash in. Kellen sat down on the steps. I could see it all flooding into him. The suspicion, the shame, the cracks, and whatever fantasy she'd sold him. I thought she loved me, he whispered. She told me the same thing. Every morning for 16 years. He looked up. What are you going to do? I didn't answer because I didn't know. But I knew what I wasn't going to do anymore. Wait. By the time I left the cabin, the sky had turned to charcoal. Kellen didn't follow. He just sat there with his head in his hands, shivering like the truth had lowered the temperature. I didn't say goodbye. There didn't seem to be a word for what we were anymore. Not friends, not enemies, not even former brothers. Just 2 men sitting in the smoking wreckage of the same lie, watching the same fire spread in opposite directions. I drove in silence, no music, no thoughts I could trust. Just headlights slicing through the trees and the occasional lurch in my stomach, each time I remembered something Clara once said and wondered what she really meant. Every memory now carried an asterisk. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the driveway with the engine running, staring at the faint silhouette of our house through the fogged windshield. It looked like someone else's life. I felt like a ghost who'd come back to haunt his own home. Eventually, I went inside. Hops, our cat, met me at the door with a soft meow. I remember petting her, kneeling down, whispering an apology I didn't fully understand. Somehow she was the only innocent one left in the house. I should have slept, but sleep felt dishonest. Instead, I went straight to the small black flash drive I tucked inside an old copy of Leaves of Grass on my office shelf, the only place Clara never touched. It held backup footage from the hidden hallway camera I'd installed last month. The main feed had been overwritten already, but this one had partial backups, motion-triggered fragments. I had never opened it until now. I loaded the file. There were 7 clips, each only a few seconds. I watched them one by one, my heart chewing itself into smaller and smaller pieces. Clip 1. Clara in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, pacing in circles. Her voice was faint but sharp. "No, I told you. The papers are already in the drawer. He doesn't check that drawer." Clip 2. She opens the hallway closet, pulls out an envelope. Inside, a passport, a credit card I didn't recognize, and something else, a key attached to a blue ribbon. Clip 3. A man, not Kellen. Tall, narrow frame, wearing a dark baseball cap pulled low. She lets him in without speaking. He hugs her. She doesn't hesitate. He whispers something in her ear and she smiles. I've never seen her smile like that before, not even on our wedding day. Clip 4. They walk toward the study. She hands him the same envelope. He places something into her hand, a flash of silver. Clip 5. She walks back to the hallway mirror, looks at herself, then says out loud, "You're almost done. Just 2 more days." Clip 6. She starts to cry. Not a collapse, not guilt, just quiet tears, controlled, like a pressure valve. Clip 7. She walks into the guest room. The door closes. That was it. But none of that was what really shook me. What truly unned me was the moment I realized the camera had been repositioned, slightly, subtly. It now pointed 2 in higher than I left it. I checked them out. The screws had been touched. She had found it. She knew I was watching, and she wanted me to. I stared at the final frame, her reflection standing just within camera view, eyes locked straight at the lens. It lasted only a second, but it was deliberate. A message. She wasn't afraid of being caught. She was daring me to act. For the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be hunted by someone you once trusted to hold your heart. I leaned back in my chair completely still and whispered, "Why?" But I already knew that question didn't matter. What mattered was what she'd do next, and whether I'd still be here when she tried. She came back on a Sunday evening, quiet, unannounced, as if the last 72 hours hadn't been the slow-motion demolition of my life. The front door opened while I was folding laundry, the sound echoing like a starting pistol. I didn't move. I just listened to her keys hit the table. Her suitcase wheels scuffed the tile. The soft exhale she always let out when she stepped into our home like it belonged to her more than it ever did to me. Then footsteps. Soft, confident, no hesitation. She wasn't afraid to see me. That meant she either didn't know what I discovered or she didn't care. She walked into the living room in a light beige cardigan, sunglasses still on top of her head, beach breeze still clinging to her hair. She smiled. "Hey, babe," like it was Tuesday. I looked at her and something inside me fractured without making a sound. I didn't say anything right away, just watched her take off her shoes, set them by the door, one beside the other, perfectly aligned. Clara always had a thing for symmetry. "How was the retreat?" I asked, my voice like ice beneath glass. She paused, just for a second. Not long enough for most people to notice, but I caught it. "It was honestly life-changing," she said. "I really needed it. Time to reflect, reconnect with myself." "You said no phones, right?" I said. She nodded. "Right. Total digital detox." "Interesting," I said, standing now, walking slowly toward the table where she had just dropped her purse. Because I got a call. Her eyes shifted. From who? I didn't answer. I reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, the same one she left behind. Her breath caught. I turned the screen toward her. You left it on purpose. Clara didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence filled in the blanks. I read your notes. I said the ones you never deleted. I saw the messages, the transfers. Kellen. Now she blinked just once. Not panic, calculation. She was measuring what I knew, how much of it could hurt her, and what stories she might use to make me doubt myself. She was always good at that, rewriting reality in real time. It's not what you think, she began. You're going to tell me I imagined the man you let into the house when I was gone. That shook her for the first time since she stepped inside. She looked uncertain. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. You planted that camera? She asked. No, I replied. I installed it after I realized you weren't who you pretended to be. She sat down on the armrest, crossing her legs like this was just another uncomfortable dinner conversation. You were watching me? I was trying to protect myself. I said, from the moment you started using words like alignment and freedom, I knew something had shifted. She exhaled, long and slow, then said something I'll never forget. I was trying to give you a chance to let go peacefully. That wasn't an apology. That was a threat wrapped in empathy. I stepped back. My chest was tight. You emptied accounts. You signed documents in my name. You fed lies to the only friend I had left. And now you're telling me you were doing me a favor. You were never going to leave, Emery, she said, voice calm. You would have just stayed quietly like always. I was suffocating. I could feel the blood drain from my face. So your answer was to suffocate me first, burn down everything, and leave with the ashes. Her expression didn't change. No, my answer was to survive. And what about me? I asked, barely keeping my voice level. What did you plan for me when you disappeared? She didn't reply. That was all I needed. You're not the only one who made plans, I said. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I stepped closer. It means, while you were away building your escape hatch, I built a door of my own. And when you opened that one, when you walked through it just now, you walked into a house that no longer belongs to you. She stared. You moved money? She asked, suddenly worried. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I moved more than that. You don't have the right. I have every right. I cut in because you forgot something, Clara. You left me here thinking I was the fool. But you made one mistake. Her voice cracked. What? You assumed I'd still be here when you got back. I turned and walked out of the room. Not to the kitchen. Not to the study. Out the front door. And this time I didn't look back. The first night I didn't sleep in that house. Felt like cheating on a ghost. I drove with no destination, only the dull weight of momentum keeping my hands on the wheel. I ended up in a small motel 30 miles south, the kind of place that smelled like cigarettes and mildew and indifference. The front desk clerk didn't ask questions, just slid me a key and told me breakfast was served until 9 o'clock, though I never planned on eating. I stood in the room for a long time before unpacking. My suitcase didn't have clothes, just documents, printed emails, statements, screen grabs of every transfer Clara made. A copy of the footage from the hallway camera burned to a thumb drive. Copies of every fake identity she tried to create under variations of her maiden name and a notarized letter from a lawyer I'd hired 4 days ago under a different last name. This wasn't revenge. This was exit. And it had to be clean. The house still belonged to me. The mortgage, my name, the utilities, the internet, the insurance, the title on the second car she always used for her solo weekends. All me. Every inch of the structure legally tied to my signature while she played games with sand beneath her feet. So, before I walked out, I flipped every legal switch I had access to. I froze all joint cards, transferred her remaining savings, the ones she hadn't found yet, into a private account. I locked the Wi-Fi, canceled her phone line, changed the garage code, and removed her name from the utilities. Then I called the locksmith. When she got back inside, it was only because I had let the door remain open long enough for the final conversation, the one she thought she would win. But that door wasn't hers anymore, and neither was I. I spent the next 2 days quietly disappearing from the world she had shared with me. I notified my job I'd be working remotely from out of state. I boxed up my belongings and had them delivered to a friend in Oregon City. I scheduled a real estate agent to tour the house for a potential listing, one Clara wouldn't be consulted on. I deleted all social media, scrubbed my number from every shared account. By the time Clara would have noticed anything missing, I was already a shadow. On the third day, I got a voicemail from Kellen. His voice was afraid. Desperate, Emery. She left. She packed everything while I was out, took the ring, the money, even my dog. She left a note that said, "You were never the plan, just the cover. What the hell is going on?" I didn't reply. I sat in my car, parked in the lot behind a tiny diner in Silverton, watching rain pool across my windshield. I knew the storm would reach her next, not the weather, but the reality. I wasn't going to deliver it. I wasn't her courier anymore. By that evening, I received a call from my lawyer. "She attempted to access your new trust account, the one you set up last week. She had a forged document and we froze everything immediately. You did the right thing. She's going to run out of runway very soon." That night, I opened the thumb drive one last time, not to relive the betrayal, but to stare directly into the truth of it. There she was on my screen, the woman I had built my life around, laughing with a man I didn't recognize, handing him a folder, kissing his cheek, glancing into the hallway camera with a tilt of her head and a smirk that now felt prehistoric. But something caught my eye. In the background of the final clip, barely visible, tucked beneath the stairs, was the envelope I had hidden months ago, the one with the letter I wrote during our 10th anniversary trip. I had planned to give it to her during dinner, but never did. I had tucked it away, forgotten it entirely. She had found it and left it there, unopened. That said everything. You only ignore a love letter when you've already decided the story is over. The next morning, I received an email. No subject line, no greeting. It read, "You were never supposed to find out this way. But I suppose that doesn't matter now. Goodbye." See, no apology, no confession, just a confirmation that she had finished writing me out of her narrative. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I had never been the victim. I had been the final loose end in someone else's heist. It's been 7 weeks since Clara disappeared for the last time. 7 weeks of quiet, of unlearning, of detaching her voice from my memories, like removing an old wallpaper. Carefully, deliberately, sometimes painfully, but it's done. And the walls are finally mine again. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple bought it, newlyweds. They walked through the open house holding hands, full of that soft, brave hope I once had. I didn't feel bitter. Watching them reminded me of who I used to be. Someone honest, someone who believed people were worth loving by default. I left a note in the drawer by the stove. wiped the mirror twice after a hot shower. It fogs easy. I wanted to leave something small behind, something human, but nothing else. When the check from the sale cleared, I booked a one-way ticket to Maine, a place Claren never wanted to visit because she couldn't stand the cold. That was exactly why I picked it. Now I live in a cottage near Bar Harbor. It smells like salt and pine and woods. I spend my mornings editing manuscripts from a sun-drenched desk by the window. My afternoons walking along rocky beaches where the sea meets the cliffs with a kind of exhaustive persistence that I deeply relate to. People here don't know me. I like that. They don't ask about Clara. They don't know about Kellen. They don't ask why I flinch when I hear certain ringtone melodies or why I still hesitate before unlocking any door. A few days ago, while cleaning out the last box I brought with me, I found something unexpected. It was the envelope, the one I had thought she'd ignored, the letter I wrote and never gave her. Somehow I must have grabbed it when I left, stuffed it among old receipts and divorce papers. I sat down and opened it for the first time, not to read what I'd written, but to let go of what I didn't need to say anymore. Inside was a photo, too, from our 5th anniversary. The last time. I remember her laughing without reservation. I stared at it for a long while. Then I burned it, not out of anger, out of relief. That photo, that letter, that version of me, they belonged to a life that was finished. Not ruined, not wasted, just complete. I didn't lose Clara. I shed her, and in the space she left behind, something unexpected grew. Last Sunday, I met someone. Not in a dramatic love-at-first-sight kind of way. We were both buying the same sourdough loaf at a tiny bakery, and she smiled because I let her have it. Her name is Marion. She teaches piano to kids in the town square. We walked the harbor together that afternoon. No pressure, no pretending. Just two people with some cracks, walking slow. She asked me what brought me to Maine. I said, a fresh start. She nodded like she understood more than I was saying. I think she does. And that to me is the real ending. Not the part where Clara vanished, not the part where I burned what remained, but this moment where the silence finally feels like peace, not punishment, where I am not waiting anymore, not for closure, not for apologies, and especially not for her. I'm already where I need to be and I'm okay. Actually, I'm